Because Elden Ring wasn't hard enough, I challenged all of you to kill as many NPCs as possible in 1 hour from a brand new game. The rules of this challenge were simple. No mods of any kind that affect gameplay, no major glitches or bugs, and you must attempt the challenge on a brand new character. Whoever can kill the most NPCs by the end of an hour will win $1,000. This was not your ordinary speedrun, and the challenge's ending was the closest it has ever been since I started making these videos. Before we begin, I'll be giving away $50 randomly to 3 of you who comment below telling me what you'd like to see from Elden Ring's DLC. I'll be responding to the winners over the next few days. Maybe you can use the money to buy a last minute gift for the holidays, or what's that? You want to spend it on this video's sponsor? Alright, if you insist. Naraka: Bladepoint is a 60-player battle royale RPG hybrid with very positive reviews and very addictive gameplay. Between December 16th and the 22nd, you can play it for free on Xbox, Steam, and the Epic Store. And after trying it out for myself, on me, he's on me, I was hooked. With a focus on melee-style combat, the game's striking visuals and extremely detailed character customization makes a strong case for why you need to try it out, and any player who completes in-game challenges between now and the 25th will be entered into a lottery, where they'll have a chance to win prizes like an Xbox or even an RTX 3090. One of the best things about the game is the fact that it's constantly being updated, and the team just announced their newest character variation, so click the link in the description to try out Naraka: Bladepoint for free, and if you enjoy it, then make sure you pick it up for 50% off before January 5th. If the world was a FromSoft game, then Forza would be the main character. As one of the most talented speedrunners I know, he's gotten first place in every challenge he's entered so far, and even has a few world records. When everyone saw that Forza was competing again, they were worried. Everyone except Chemist. Chemist is an anomaly. Elden Ring is the first game he's ever speedrun, but Forza is his biggest rival. A few months ago, the two of them went back and forth racing to see who'd be the first to beat the game glitchless in under an hour, and Chemist came out on top. For someone so new to the scene, this was very impressive. In spite of their rivalry though, this challenge was full of jolly cooperation, with each runner sharing information publicly about their runs. This eventually led to them all taking one singular optimized route, and as a result, I get to tell one incredible story through the eyes of 3 amazing runners. When Forza starts his run, he chooses the Samurai as his starting class because it's objectively the best one in the game for speedrunning, and then he's going to take the Rune as his keepsake. After purposely dying to the tutorial boss and using his keepsake on the elevator, Forza activates the first step grace and then quits out to speed up its animation. This saves about a second or so, and when he loads back in, he displays some very optimized movement. By jumping off of this cliff and two-handing his bow, he's able to cancel his landing animation before bunny hopping over to the Church of Ella. He isn't just bunny hopping though. Between each hop, he makes sure to block in order to prevent the game from making his next jump a baby jump, which covers significantly less ground. Believe it or not, this bunny hopping strategy is actually the fastest way of getting around before you have access to torrent. When Forza finally arrives at the church, he commits the first sin of his run by brutally murdering Kale, doing so in such a way to keep him away from his mule. This is important because every merchant becomes much more threatening once they're on it, and under no circumstances should you ever let a merchant get on his mule. Chemist is ready for his run. After missing his animation cancel and taking out Kale, he stops by the gatefront ruins to pick up torrent and then dumps his runes from his keepsake into Dex. When he picks up another grace nearby, he cancels the activation animation by immediately warping to it as soon as it becomes available. From here, Chemist does the unthinkable, and you might actually want to look away for this one. Heading south leads him to a somber smithing stone, and going even further in that direction brings him to this Everjail. This fight is extremely dangerous at their current level because one mistake is all it really takes with an HP bar that small. Fortunately, this fight is so early in the run that the risk is completely justified, but Chemist makes it look easy anyway with such a flawless fight. For his efforts, he's rewarded with the Bloodhound's Fang, and thanks to the dex he invested earlier, he's already able to wield it. After a somewhat difficult fight, Forza manages to make it out of his Everjail alive, and then he uses a nearby Spirit Spring to skip the bridge on his way into the Weeping Peninsula. He isn't there long though, and only decides to activate this grace before returning to Gatefront and eventually arriving at the War Master's shack. Now, don't worry, these guys aren't crazy enough to challenge Bernal this early, and while he does drop some respectable gear, this fight is just way too dangerous, even with the Bloodhound's Fang. Instead, they're going to pick up some exalted flesh from a nearby camp and kill a much more helpless NPC instead, Alexander. Although it's hard to watch, killing Alexander here causes him to drop the Warrior Jar Shard, which is a talisman that boosts the attack power of skills by 10%, and this includes Bloodhound's Finesse. In a way, you could say that Alexander lives on with each runner in the form of this talisman. Towards the east, Forza finds another merchant, and while they are considered NPCs for the sake of this challenge, it's important to note that their poise actually behaves much more like an enemy, which allows them to be stance broken. Because of this, most of the early game merchants can be locked into a true combo, which sets them up for really consistent kills. When Chemist defeats his merchant, he stops by the Hunter of the Dead to make him a dead hunter instead, and doing so now will prevent him from relocating to the Round Table Hold where he can't be attacked. After stopping by Summonwater Village, Chemist does us all a favor by killing Kenneth Haight, but the way he does it is really smart. He leads with a jumping R1 because it does less damage and won't immediately aggro him, which allows him to get an extra hit off. As they make their way into the forest, Forza has an unexpected run-in with a Rune Bear. The shenanigans don't end there though, and soon they arrive at another merchant, but instead of killing him right away, they decide to purchase a festering Bloody Finger first. This gives them the ability to invade other NPCs later in the run, which will count towards their total. Here we get to see why it's important not to let the merchant get on his mule. That painful exchange puts Chemist about 25 seconds behind Forza, but in the grand scheme of the run, that's not too bad because things are about to get really tough. From here, both runners enter Fort Haight, where they collect the first half of the medallion before warping back to Summonwater Village and killing the first invader of the run. Invader fights can go south quickly, and when Forza challenges this one, Anastasia does a clean dodge over his initial attack and wipes out most of his HP bar, forcing him to fall back and heal. A series of L2s chips away at her health, with Forza only committing to the first one just to be safe. He does take a major risk with this last one though, because if she had attacked him there like she did before, then he was finished. Chemist's fight isn't going much better. After taking some hits early on, he whiffs the weapon skill here, and then he almost gets killed going for a second one. Once he finds his footing, Anastasia goes down and both runners pick up a drawstring lightning grease as they make their way east into Caelid. Killing the Scarab Beetle on this branch is a free Somber Smithing Stone 4, and jumping here takes them to the other side of Dragon Barrow. Forza's gonna quit out here because aggroing the enemies nearby means that he's now losing stamina every time he sprints, and once he picks up this grace, it's evident that he's achieved a new personal best on that last split. Both runners enter Fort Ferrith in search of the second half of the medallion, and although they could easily die in one hit, they manage to make it out unscathed. With both halves of the Diakoptes medallion in their inventory, they're now able to gain access to Altus Plateau via the Grand Lift, but that's still a little ways off from now. Returning to Liurnia's mountainside and making this jump saves about 15 seconds, and then they're going to stop at this church to take out Thops. Since it just happens to be raining, the lightning grease they picked up earlier makes him take additional damage. That's a pretty nice detail. No wonder Elden Ring won Game of the Year. Forza activates a grace by a merchant but avoids fighting him for now, and instead heads towards the academy, stealing the key from behind this dragon and sniping a scarab off in the distance. That'll net him a Somber Smithing Stone 2, which means all he needs now is a 3 and a 5 in order to reach +5. Back at the academy, Forza activates some graces, making sure to cancel their animations, especially now that he's no longer in Limgrave. If he doesn't, then he could risk triggering Melina, whose cutscene will waste a lot of time. When Chemist reaches the academy, after activating all the same graces, he takes a leap of faith by jumping into the Spirit Spring and then loots the Somber Smithing Stone 3 from beside this chair. From the eastern gate, Chemist heads north towards this church, and both runners pick up a Sacred Tear before entering the Grand Lift of Diakoptes, which gives them access to a lot of NPCs. This is where the run starts to get hard. After gaining access to the plateau, they're going to activate a bunch of graces, which will make getting around a lot easier, with the plan being to warp back to all of these graces once their weapon is fully upgraded to kill NPCs. Since this is an in-game location, it's important to choose their fights wisely, and that means skipping this merchant for now. This one is particularly dangerous because he has access to Frenzied Flame incantations, which will one-shot you if you aren't careful. Following a bit of parkour, they enter a nearby forest and find a scarab beetle, which drops the final piece they need for a +5 weapon. When Forza enters Mount Gelmir, properly sitting at this grace will finally summon Melina, and upon entering the round table, he brings his Fang to +6. Now that he's powered up, he can finally start taking on some of these stronger NPCs, but when he returns to Mount Gelmir, if you look closely, you can see that Forza actually jumped here, but the game just ate his input. Luckily, he has some pretty fast reflexes and he's able to quit out, but that was a close one. After upgrading his weapon, Chemist returns to Altus Plateau himself and uses the Festering Finger he bought earlier to invade Magnus. I cannot express how dangerous Magnus is, especially 30 minutes into the game. Even with the +5 Bloodhound's Fang, Chemist could die at any moment, and since it's believed that this NPC can read your inputs, the only safe way to fight him is to get him to run at you and then attack. When Magnus dies, he drops yet another Somber Smithing Stone, and this will let runners take their weapon all the way to +6. Before upgrading his weapon, Chemist stops and talks to Brother Corrin so that he can start his quest, and doing so will cause him to move over to the plateau where he can be slain. At this point, they make their way towards Stormvale to take on the first actual boss of the run, and Chemist's fight belongs in a textbook. He gets a very good opener from Margit, and while he dodges his slow attack, Chemist is able to rack up some good damage. One more hit to his back breaks his stance, and after just a few more swings, Margit goes down in just 15 seconds. Forza was not so fortunate, and his fight goes almost as badly as it could have gone, with him almost dying. He manages to pull it together though, and his fight ends up taking about 22 seconds. The quickest way to enter Stormvale is also the most dangerous, and we're about to see why. Talking to Ghostalk will prompt him to open up the main gate, and once he does, they kill him. For some reason though, Ghostalk has almost as much HP as Margit, so it takes much longer than it really should. When Forza finally enters the main gate, he receives a very warm welcome. Chemist avoids the archers altogether, climbing stairs and dodging enemies until he reaches Nefeli. After killing her, he's gonna warp back to the War Master's shack to take on Bernal, and now that his weapon is upgraded, Bernal dies in just 3 hits. The invader at the Colosseum suffers the same fate, and before long, Chemist finds himself back in Caelid. There, he kills another merchant before getting invaded by Millicent, and this fight can go one of 2 ways. If Millicent decides to play passively and stall, then that gives the soldiers around her enough time to join in, making the fight a 4v1. Luckily that doesn't happen though, and Chemist gets the kill before things get bad. Forza is not happy. Quitting out buys him the time he needs to survive, and the way he keeps his cool in this situation is very impressive. He maximizes his stamina regeneration by periodically crouching as he runs, and without any more trouble he makes his way all the way inside of the castle. Forza then kills Nefeli and Bernal, choosing to wear Bernal's armor for the extra poise. And as he makes his way through Caelid, he kills all of the same NPCs as Chemist, but things start to change once the runners reach Mount Gelmir. Upon arriving at this shack, Anastasia the Tarnished Eater will invade you again, and according to this challenge's rules, killing her again will increase the NPC count. In an attempt to not get eaten, Forza hangs out on the edge of this cliff while Anastasia does her thing. As Chemist waits for Anastasia to fall, things do not go as planned. After a nice recovery, both runners are going to return to Liurnia, activating this grace before going north towards Bogart, who drops Raya's necklace. This item is necessary to progress her quest because it causes her to relocate to Altus Plateau, and that gives the player a free warp to Volcano Manor, which is useful because that's where Tanith resides. Tanith is the one who gives the player orders to kill other NPCs. Perfect for this run. When Forza gives Raya the necklace he took from Bogart, he makes a huge mistake by warping to the wrong side of Grace, and this causes Raya to appear at a different unknown location. When he realizes what he's done, Forza starts to panic and aimlessly wanders around in hopes of finding her. Forza wastes so much time here that his room turns red to indicate that he's losing time on his split, and this is the perfect opportunity to introduce the third and final character of this run, Moki is the challenge's dark horse. He's another French runner with less experience than Chemist and Forza, but he's the one who discovered that it was faster to pick up the somber smithing stones as opposed to buying them. He's also the one who figured out how to avoid fighting some of the run's most dangerous NPCs. When Moki finds Raya, she warps him to Volcano Manor where he joins Tanit's family and agrees to kill some NPCs. The first one on his list is Istvan, who can be found by invading near Limgrave's Coliseum. This fight is relatively safe, but Istvan has a lot of HP and will punish you if you get impatient. Knowing this, Moki takes his time and it definitely pays off. After turning in that request, Moki picks up another one, and this time his orders are to kill Riley, who can be found over in Altus Plateau. On his way there, he stops to kill Brother Corin, who's now outside of the round table looking for Gold Mask, but he finds himself on the other end of Moki's blade instead. Back at the top of Mount Gelmir, Moki is invaded by Eleonora, and here we get to see the same strategy they used against Anastasia. Eleonora seems to catch on though, and decides to waste a lot of Moki's time before eventually jumping to her death. During his invasion with Riley, we get to see exactly why these fights are so dangerous.
What?
When Riley goes down, Moki warps to the bridge and takes out this merchant before heading over to the shack where he cheeses Anastasia. Although he's fighting the same NPCs in a slightly different order, he's still neck and neck with Chemist, who has been crushing his run. When Chemist finds Raya, everything goes according to plan, with him joining Tanith's family and taking on a nearby invader. Bloodborne fans will recognize Giza's weapon as the pizza cutter, but unfortunately he doesn't get a chance to cut anything with it. Back at the first step, Chemist finally kills Vare, and if you're wondering why he didn't do it sooner, it's because he needed Vare alive in order to invade Magnus. While he's here, he makes a quick trip to the beach where he kills another merchant, and after fighting some familiar faces, Chemist finds himself outside of Patches' cave. He's gonna kill Nerigis, but when it comes to Yura, Chemist leaves him alive because starting his quest will give him access to another NPC outside of Raya Lucaria, but Patches needs to die first because, well, it's Patches. In Raya Lucaria, Chemist and Yura team up for an epic showdown against this assassin, and at the bottom of a nearby cave, Chemist kills a Bloodhound Knight who's guarding the entrance to yet another NPC named Latenna. With about 15 minutes left in his run, Chemist's heart rate begins to soar. He knows that he's in the final stretch of his run, and that the smallest mistake could spell the end of it. Although he has no plans of visiting the Halleck Tree, he stops by the village of the Albinarics to get the secret medallion from Albus before killing him. This encourages Insha to invade when he enters the Round Table hold, revealing that he was the one who ransacked the village in search of the medallion. While Chemist is here, he's gonna jump down and take on Albric, whose Frost and Bleed combination make him a fearsome opponent. And with Albric out of the way, he returns to Altus Plateau to kill Corin and Eleonora himself. Chemist makes short work of both Riley and Malay, and both runners go on a rampage, warping all over the lands between, killing whatever NPCs they can find. In the last 4 minutes, they make a mad dash over to the 45th and final NPC, who's over 3 minutes away. Unsure if he'll make it in time, Chemist starts to lose it.
Allez, yes, 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 yes. Allez, allez. Je vous en supplie. I beg you. Yes. Allez. Merde, je suis pas appliqué.
Yes.
Oui, c'est tout droit, yes. Oh, je l'ai fait à l'instant, sa mère. Je me suis pas appliqué. Bonjour les vérifieurs. Votre catégorie, j'en peux plus. J'en peux plus de votre catégorie. C'est de la merde. Le speedrun Elden Ring, ça pue la merde. Sekiro, c'est largement... Je suis pas un expert du speedrun. Et voilà, sur ce, nique votre catégorie de merde. Yeah. Bouh.
Chemist manages to beat Moki by just 1 second. But where does that leave Forza, who couldn't find Raya? After nearly 2 minutes of searching, Forza finally finds Raya, and as it turns out, if you warp to a different Grace, then she moves to this location instead. Once he returns her necklace, Forza endures all of the same trials and tribulations we've seen so far, only his fights are all slightly faster. The reason why is because of Forza's superior decision making, and there is no better example of that than when he takes on the strongest merchant of his run. This fight is so well executed that Chemist himself actually comments in his chat congratulating him on how stylish it was. Upon defeating that merchant, Forza kills several NPCs until his kill count climbs to 44. When he arrives at the final merchant, he realizes that there's just enough time to take on one more NPC. Warping back to this grace and heading east brings Forza to a waypoint, which takes him to the Bestial Sanctum, and by this point, he stripped off all of his armor because it literally doesn't matter anymore. At his current level, if he gets hit, then he'll immediately die. Forza goes for 3 hits which aggro Gronk, but he's timed it perfectly so that the 4th hit will break his stance. He has just enough time to land 2 more hits, but only after initiating a block cancel. Without doing that, he wouldn't have been able to land this riposte. As Gronk recovers, he goes for a charged R2, and this allows him to get 1 more hit in before he retaliates, to which Forza responds with a frame perfect roll. He's going to jump the Beast Claw and get another hit, rolling the shotgun blast and breaking his stance. After landing 2 more hits, you can see him crouch here so that he can recover as much stamina as possible before going for the riposte. Now Forza's in a familiar situation. He charges an R2, but it's clear that he doesn't have enough stamina to go for another, so he waits it out and rolls the follow-up instead. Forza jumps the Beast Claw again here, and when Gronk corners himself, 1 more hit breaks his stance, and Bloodhound's finesse ends the fight in style. With 15 seconds remaining, Forza takes the gold as the only runner capable of killing 46 NPCs in just 1 hour. Amazing. If you like watching speedrunners overcome impossible odds, then I think you'll really like this video where I locked 3 of them in a room with an invincible boss for $1,000. And don't forget to check out Forza, Chemist, and Moki in the description below.